Okay, guys, I'm back for another session here, and today I'm going to be talking about some root fundamentals again. That's been a common theme, as you can see, and this one is going to be kind of the big one, the 8 root fundamentals of mental, emotional, and spiritual well-being, health, healing, development, the MES journey. And so we'll jump right in with what the roots are, and then I will show a little bit about how they're all really interconnected with each other. They're all part of the whole with one another. So the first root fundamental is exposing and processing past trauma. And that can be done in a number of ways. I do a personal technique that I learned from Brandon Bays in her book, The Journey, A Practical Guide to Healing Your Life and Setting Yourself Free. Great book. You guys should check that out. Amazing. I then utilize that in conjunction with psychedelics and oftentimes without very powerful techniques, sober or also in the use of psychedelics. So her technique, if I'm correct on this, kind of involves a bit of guided meditation, hypnosis, and also Gestalt therapy, which is kind of switching perspectives to be able to gain an ability to, I guess, somewhat distance yourself. You can give yourself a separation from the trauma and be able to find a way to actually forgive. We've covered the conversation of forgiveness, and again, I have seen that be somewhat of a controversial subject in some circles. And again, I think that's a misunderstanding. I believe some people misunderstand and confuse the idea of relationship repair with forgiveness, and they're not the same thing. Forgiveness is for the self, and forgiveness is the technique in which we find a way to release ourselves from being bound to the traumatic event in the past, from the bindings that hold us to that trauma and continue to influence our lives. So, yes, processing past trauma can be done in a number of ways: somatic therapies, breathing exercises, meditation exercises, different types of, talk therapies and interactions with therapy, EMDR, flashing lights, possibly sounds, getting you into a space where you can access past trauma. Of course, psychedelics can be used to process past traumas as well, although that can be, that's something you have to approach cautiously. And so many different ways to process past trauma, but it's truly root fundamental in order to free your life, in order for you to achieve healing and peace of mind. You have to process that past trauma. And there's evidence that I believe came out from Johns Hopkins and maybe other notable universities and medical authority, institutions that have found that trauma is not just in the brain. It isn't just a mental construct. It is stored in your body. So that is an interesting fact that's important in relationship to the idea of processing past trauma. Now, the second root fundamental is going to be something I call not doing. And I call it not doing for a reason. Other people may use different words, and I'm going to use those words in a second. But not doing is the practice of simply that. And that means no screen time, no phone, no conversations, no food, no distractions, no anything. Just sitting and doing absolutely nothing. And at the highest level goal would be to actually stop thinking as well. Most people are probably not capable of that. I struggle with not thinking. Very difficult to achieve kind of the no mind. And to reference, some movies out there, it was referenced. No Mind was used in the movie The Last Samurai. In Bagger Vance, I believe the advice from Bagger Vance, was played by Will Smith, was to see the field, I believe it was. And then he later described it as turning off the mind without falling asleep. Very high level skill to be able to do that. Extremely difficult to find that zone, that flow where you're in a no mind place. So, many people spend a lifetime doing what they call meditation. And I would say that's what this is, but I think sometimes that word meditation then gives, you the idea that you're doing something. And the goal here is not to do anything. And so, and in doing nothing, Oftentimes people will say, oh, the worst possible thing you could do is set me on a beach somewhere and have me, do nothing, or put me somewhere and have me have nothing to do and my hands are empty and I got nothing that I can do. And that's where you see some people, if they go into retirement, things like that as they get older, can really sink into a depression, or their health can be adversely affected. And it's because they haven't truly, developed a skill around not doing. If you watch animals, and I have a dog, and if you watch animals in general, you'll find they do a lot of not doing, and they're quite happy doing that. And that is a natural connection with rest and with simply being. And we seem to lack that in this modern society of go, 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 do. And one of the things that will happen as you begin to slow down and stop doing is you will confront yourself, and you will come face to face with past trauma if it hasn't already been processed. So oftentimes that's what you'll see with people who are addicts, or people who have, different, challenges mentally that they're working with. You'll find that they have a very hard time sitting with themselves. And so, just by not doing, you will begin to face past trauma. And so they're very much linked with each other. The third root fundamental is connecting with nature. There's all sorts of ways of doing that. You can connect with nature by just simply going outdoors and, enjoying the flowers, the air, the breeze. You can connect with nature by having interactions with animals, even having pets. You can connect with nature, obviously, in a variety of ways, and hiking and mountain climbing and, possibly outdoor bouldering if you're more athletically inclined, surfing, snowboarding, those type of things. Any type of outdoor activity. But in that outdoor activity, I think there needs to be another level of depth to that, to truly attempt to connect with nature and feel an internal connection with nature. That there's a reason that we appreciate the beauty of the sky, the beauty of the mountains, the beauty of the ocean, beauty in the deserts, that is our very deep internal connection with nature itself. And in seeing the cycles of nature, you'll find that, there's a cycle and natural flow to times when nature is busy and doing things and surviving and acquiring food and energy and those type of things. And then times when nature is very much in almost a dormant state, or in that not doing, in that, state of emptiness and stillness. And so that also then, of course, links to the second root fundamental, which links to the first root fundamental, processing past trauma. The fourth root fundamental is a big one. They all are big, super important, and that is assessing one's beliefs, really kind of looking under the hood. One of the things that I have noticed throughout society and within interactions between people in group settings and one-on-one settings, and even in their own assessment and self-reflection, is that there are operating beliefs that are happening at almost light speed. They're automated. They aren't even considered. They're accepted as fact and without ever being really reviewed. And some of these types of beliefs can be, in some cases, very toxic and damaging and hurtful, and may be causing a lot of internal pain. And in many cases, we're not even aware of how much those beliefs are causing us enormous pain. And so it's really important to get in there and start to bring awareness and light to what's going on cognitively with the belief system. What do we believe about ourselves? What do we believe about others around us? What do we believe about the world? What do we believe about the universe? What do we believe about everything? And in some cases, maybe we just need to start all over and really start from square one. I've worked actually with several people now who have been victims of cults, and that's extremely powerful influence on an individual, especially someone who is in a vulnerable state, which they usually are when they're recruited by a cult, and then to really hard program them into these types of beliefs. And so leaving a cult can be extremely difficult, very, very painful. And so there's a lot of work that needs to be done on establishing and understanding where we're at with our beliefs. And so that's just a huge fundamental root there. Moving on is the fifth root, which is the relationship root. It is we are social beings. We are social species. We need those around us to have deep interactions and consistent, relationships with other members of our species and our community and build those communities. And without that, we can see that there's a very abrasive effect on the psyche of individuals, for instance, who are experiencing solitary confinement in actual, physical confinement in prisons and things like that, or folks who are isolated for various number of reasons, including, mental health challenges and issues with family, perhaps issues with circumstance, possibly even job settings. And oftentimes I find certain types of entrepreneurs are very isolated because of the type of business they're operating and where it kind of puts them with things, and they can find themselves in an isolated position at times as the boss, as the owner of the business. It can be isolating. So, relationships is very important. And we discussed this in an earlier video, the 5 steps of relationship repair. Again, the difference between forgiveness and relationship repair and where the kind of intersection point is there. And so, and also there's a skill in building relationships and meeting people and fostering and nurturing relationships, all kinds of skills in that root fundamental. So that's the 5th root. The 6th root fundamental was almost divided into 2, and I'll explain why. The root fundamental is, diet, exercise, and breath work. And the reason it was almost put into 2 is because breath work is almost its own thing. I see it as kind of related to diet and exercise. Breath work could be seen as a type of exercise, but it's also very much related to, the 2nd root fundamental of not doing. Breath work in conjunction with that really helps to slow the mind down and connect with the self in an empty stillness space. And so it's a really important practice, breath work and those types of things, as well as other practices involved with health. Obviously, diet can be really influential, important in your mood and your outlook on life and, your overall health. Exercise, really important for those same reasons, and just physical health in general. Things like cold plunges, things like saunas, many different types of activities can contribute to positive health, and breath work is really a part of almost all of them in some way, shape, or form, and especially really involved with both the processing past trauma and not doing. So that's the 6th root fundamental: diet, exercise, and breath work. 7th root fundamental is really an important one, and it's a fundamental because it's something that we're so adverse to as humans, I would say, and maybe hard to say what animals really go through. I think organisms seek maybe the easiest path, but the 7th root fundamental is embracing and being accustomed to being uncomfortable, really allowing yourself to be uncomfortable. Processing past trauma is not a comfortable thing to do. With the amount of momentum we have on go, do in our society, not doing and sitting still is a rather uncomfortable thing to do for many, so that can be tough. Connecting with nature, I don't believe should be really uncomfortable unless you've really lived an indoor lifestyle and maybe just been in New York City your whole life. So that maybe it is something that's uncomfortable for some folks. Addressing your beliefs, I can promise you, can be very uncomfortable. And so, at every level, relationship repair, building relationships sometimes can be awkward. Going through different aspects of the relationship stuff all involve a certain amount of discomfort at certain times. Exercise, possibly even eating more healthy could be a little uncomfortable at the time, depending on your habits prior to this. So being uncomfortable is a theme that comes up over and over and over again. And it is really important to change your mindset around discomfort. I brought up saunas and cold plunges in the 6th root fundamental. Both those things are not necessarily comfortable, right? So establishing, and doing these type of things that aren't comfortable obviously can lead to greater improvement in health. So being uncomfortable is just such an important thing to be willing to experience and go through. And there is a balance point. Sometimes, with maybe many of you are familiar with David Goggins. Sometimes I think he goes a little too far. Hey, it all depends on what you're trying to achieve. I know for him, it's there's a higher level there he's achieving of possibly even, I would say, a change in consciousness that's happening from what he's doing. And that may actually align with some of the Toltec shamanism and where I think some of this comes from with the Tarahumara or the Rarimari, who are people who are known for running hundreds of miles. So, some things about that make sense. But there is a balance, and I going through injury healing and injury, actual physical injury healing and injury repair. I can tell you have to be very careful because you don't. There are certain types of pain you need to listen to and not go into. And there are other types of pain that it's important that you actually do embrace and go into. And so understanding those differences can be quite a journey. But anyway, that's all kind of under the heading and the root fundamental of embracing being uncomfortable. And the last root fundamental, which I think really kind of incorporates all 7 prior to it, is diminishing one's ego. And ego management. Ego mitigation is such an important part, I think, of this life and really achieving a peaceful, happy life. And I think Eckhart Tolle did a really great job of outlining what I mean in this context of what ego is, because I think there's possibly some different definitions out there. And sometimes people with a certain definition believe, oh, well, you can't survive without an ego because then you would think you're kind of one with everything and you wouldn't even like eat food or you wouldn't even drink water. That's not what I mean. The particular aspect of human personality that I'm speaking of is one that's very self-centered, always consumed with comparisons to others, and always consumed with the past or the future. Those are some key components of what the ego is, and it's always linked into our past traumas. So that's something that I would say Eckhart did a great job in expressing in his books of Power Now and The New Earth. And so a great couple of books. If you get a chance, you want to check those out. Those are the 8 root fundamentals. They are lifelong skills. Each and every one of them are lifelong developments. And so I don't believe it's necessarily possible to master all 8. I think it's something where you want to get a solid foundation with all 8 and really get competent with all 8 of those. And then maybe you will develop in certain aspects of those more than others. And that's probably, personal preference and predisposition and those kinds of things. But they're all very, very important, and they're all absolutely fundamental in mental, emotional, spiritual health. And then, of course, if you are interested in the psychedelic world and psychedelic facilitation or psychedelic journeying of your own, they're all very, very important in that as well. So, yeah, those are the 8 roots, guys. Wanted to share those with you. Happy to go further with it. We're going to be taking deeper dives into each one of them and seeing how they relate to other things. We'll obviously, sometimes we'll be talking about dating. Sometimes we'll be talking more about psychedelic experiences. We could be talking about meditation and the challenges met there. So many different things, and they all are going to relate to those root fundamentals. So, all right, guys, I will see you in the next one. Bye.